The fifth global conference on the elimination of child labor is currently taking place at the Durban ICC. The conference seeks to look at why millions of children are victims of exploitative labor practices. This event will help construct the path towards a world free from child labor. Bongani Gema has more.
Of the 160 million child laborers across the world, 106 of them are out of school. These are children between the ages of 5 to 11. The majority of them are children of migrants who lack the necessary, documents to be absorbed in the schools of the countries that they find themselves in. Earlier, I spoke with the Deputy Speaker of the Nelson Mandela Children's Parliament, who was saying that they want schools to be better resourced so that children who are at school do not see the need to drop out and find jobs to help out in their family households. I have with me Benjamin Smith, the senior specialist at the International Labour Organization, who's going to speak to us of how schools can be better resourced so that education can help fight the scourge of child labor. So thank you very much for joining us. Just tell us, how can schools be better resourced to fight, to ensure elimination of child labor?
Yes, so all children have the right to education. So universal, free, quality education. So when we say free, it means no tuition, no fees, and it also means the indirect costs of education that many times prevent children from being able to go to school. Those need to be eliminated. Maybe it's transport costs, maybe it's uniforms or books or supplies. These things can really add up for parents who are stressed economically. So it's important to make education free. Also quality, as you pointed out. The quality is extremely important so that children are engaged, so that they can learn, and then as they grow older, have a decent opportunity to get good work.
I want to bring you to the issue of our children of migrants, because I was speaking earlier to Michaela Dikok, was saying that the children sometimes lack the documents to help them get into school. How can these children be assisted?
Well, I think the government has an important role to play here. Again, education is a universal right. It doesn't matter whether a child is an immigrant or not, whether they have papers or not. The policy should be governments guarantee quality education for all children in the country. So when that's not the case, it's important to take measures. It could include birth registration. So there are hundreds of millions of children today without their birth certificate, and that can be an impediment. It can block them from enrolling in school. So they have a right to identity, right? And so the first step there is governments need to make sure that all births are registered. And then when it comes time to enroll children, make sure that it's done on time, that they get that early start. Those early years are critical for learning, for development. If you miss out on those first few months and years of education, you're putting a child at a real disadvantage in terms of their future possibilities.
Now, governments will say that they do ensure that children are taken into school, but what happens is that children end up dropping out.
Yes, exactly. And many times the reason why they're dropping out is because lack of quality education. So parents see that their children aren't learning necessarily skills and they're not getting that quality education to make it worthwhile. At the same time, in poor households, there's that constant pull of children into child labor. And so especially as they get older, and you see it typically around 12, 13 years old, dropout rates really shoot up amongst those economically stressed families, because they don't see necessarily the value of the education relative to, and they're not very productive workers, but they earn something. And in the context of extreme poverty, it matters. And so that calculation inside households needs to change. Part of that is better livelihoods for families, particularly in agriculture, where 70% of child labor occurs. So we need rural development, we need livelihoods, diversification for those rural families. We also need to increase the quality of education and make sure that it's, by the way, accessible. So it's about infrastructure, it's about closing the teacher gap. There's a need to recruit tens of millions of teachers. Right now there are a real problem of overcrowded classes, and that when you're a child in a class of 50 other children, it's the chances of you getting a good education are slim. So that teacher gap is certainly an important part of closing it is an important part of the challenge.
Really appreciate it, sir.
Thank you very much.
Well, there you have it, Benjamin Smith of the International Labour Organization speaking to us about the importance of education and how education can be used, to ensure the elimination of child labor by the year 2025. As you know, that is the goal in line with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, and also saying that the issue of overcrowdedness in schools is also a factor when it comes to children dropping out, inequality in the type of education they are receiving. Also calling for a better curriculum so that children will see the need to stay at school, because when they get the better skills, they will see that education is actually their way to guarantee a brighter future for themselves.